The promise of life can serve as an incredible, intangible adventure for you to guide in whichever direction you see fit. For Joshua Goldberg, his life has taken on an interesting and somewhat unpredictable trajectory, which has exposed him to several of life's different cultures and places. By day, he's a personal injury attorney, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. He was born in Montreal, and then in his 20s, he traveled to Asia to study Chinese, and eventually met his husband in China, settled for a while in Australia before moving back to Ontario. Josh is known by his clients as being dedicated, compassionate, and committed to finding solutions sooner so that they can expedite their recovery and receive their compensation. Well, I know I'm intrigued to have a conversation with this international man of mystery. So pull up a chair and do yourself a favor and stay a while. Because I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited about having you on the show today to talk about your career in law and your interesting life outside of the office. Great to see you this morning, and thank you so very much for being here.
Sounds good, thanks.
So, Josh, you tell me that you have an interesting life story that has taken many twists and turns. So I'm wondering if you could tell the good people all about your life and how you got to where you are today, buddy.
My first 18 years of life were pretty boring. I mean, I lived a pretty kind of traditional Jewish lifestyle with a Jewish family. You know, went to Hebrew school, and you know, everything was kind of you know, nothing too exciting. And then when I was about 18, I decided to go abroad and study Chinese, and you know, that's when things started to get interesting. I spent the next, like, I think it was maybe 7 years or 5 years or 6 years coming back and forth between Canada, China, Australia, and you know, moving around Asia. And then I started law school in 2006 or 2007. And then since 2009, I've been living in Toronto, and I graduated in 2010, and I've been a lawyer since 2011.
And I know you were originally born in Montreal, buddy, and I know that that was a big part of your childhood. And I also know that you met your husband when you were abroad, and you had some challenges starting your career. So I'm wondering if you could just talk to me about the evolution or evolvement of your career and how you got to where you are, bud.
Well, first about my husband, it was an interesting story. We met when I was living temporarily in Beijing. You know, he was actually getting ready to move to Australia, and you know, I was about to leave again, actually. So we started dating, and then you know, we're kind of back and forth between Beijing and you know, eventually when he moved to Australia, you know, we kind of had to make a decision: do we break up or do we go? And I said, you know what, I'm going to go to Australia if you come with me to Canada if and when I go to law school. And so I went to Australia for a year and a bit with him, and then after that came to Canada. We moved to Ottawa for law school, and then we got married in 2015, but we've been together since about 2000, I don't remember, 2000, we've been together like 17 years. I can't recall the exact date, maybe 2004 or 5.
I got you. And I know that growing up in all those different cultures and having exposure to that has to have some level of impact on how you view the world and all it
Yeah.
has to offer. So I'm wondering, how did being exposed to all those cultures affect the person you are today?
I think it makes me, I think that I'm a lot more open-minded, to be honest, and I'm able to solve problems better, to be very frank. And I apologize. This is one of those moments where the dogs are harassing me again for
Yeah,
treats. They went through the first round way faster than I expected.
well, it makes it for a more authentic podcast, doesn't it?
And one of my dogs is very demanding. She'll actually bang on the table if she doesn't get what she wants. So,
I got it.
but but sorry, just to get back to your question, um, when you move somewhere that's very foreign to you, like you don't speak the language, and or you're not necessarily living, but when you're in a country where things are very foreign, just the way of life and the language, the way people think and the way people do things, it takes a lot of effort to really you have to understand people to figure out how to solve problems that come up, and just the daily little problems, like for example getting electricity. It's a silly example, but like when I had to like pay for new electricity the first time in China, it was actually like a huge hassle that probably took about like 15 hours of work and understanding like what the issues were. It's not a very exciting example, but um, you learn how to adjust to people, and kind of look at people from a different perspective, and you learn how to get creative with problem solving. And it's important to be able to see through other people's eyes, and that's how I try to practice law as well. Like I try to always, every case I have is a problem that needs to be solved, and to solve that problem I have to look at my opponent and say, okay, so what are their obstacles, and what do they see as the issues?
Yeah, and tell me, Josh, I'm curious to ask you about where your passion for law comes from, and why did you decide to dive into the personal injury side of things?
So law, just generally, I was always interested in. Since, to be honest, it sounds cheesy, but since I was a little kid, I was the type of child who didn't really watch, cartoons and stuff. I'd rather watch, Dallas and Law and Order. So from a very young age, I was watching legal dramas, and I always just found it really fascinating, just the law. Like even the smallest, most kind of bland issue to me sounded really interesting. I was always reading about the law. And I always knew I wanted to go into law school. Uh, and one thing led to another, and I got in and graduated. And as far as personal injury, it was sort of an accident. I mean, most people will tell you in law school that you go in thinking you're going to do one thing, and you end up doing something completely different. I thought I was going to be doing international human rights when I started law school, and I took an insurance law course. I mean, personal injury is essentially insurance law, the practice of insurance law from the plaintiff side. And I just really liked it. It was I did the best of all my courses. I got an A plus actually, and from there on, I started doing a summer internship, and then I articled in a firm that does personal injury, and then since then I've just stayed with it. I really enjoy the practice, like getting to help people, and it's an interesting practice. You're just always doing something different. And I'm the type of person, I couldn't do, a practice where I'm just reading, like one document for, like 6 days straight. I need to be constantly like dealing with different problems and solving different things. And that's, one of the things that you get in this practice area.
Yeah, absolutely. And Josh, at the end of this month, I'm addressing a group of first-time teachers for the University of Windsor. And I'm curious, I've been asking all of my podcasting guests this month about the impact that teachers have had on their lives and how they've impacted their lives into the person they are today. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit for me.
Absolutely. My first, well, in terms of me studying Chinese, the reason I studied Chinese was because I took a history of China course, and the teacher I had was just phenomenal. And, he inspired me to go learn the language and learn, about the country firsthand. Law school, same thing. I mentioned I got that A+ in insurance law. That was because the teacher was mesmerizing. Like I loved the course. Like I loved listening to her speak and teach. And I think teachers have had a huge impact on me. Aside from the insurance, so I can't think of a specific other teacher who's had a major impact in terms of law, but yeah, like all the areas I ever considered doing were due to having great teachers. My criminal law professor, another one who's amazing towards law.
Yeah, absolutely. And doing my research on you, Josh, I know that you're a foodie and you're a movie buff. So tell me, what's your favorite movie of all time? And if you had a guilty pleasure in terms of food, what would that be, buddy?
So my favorite food is unquestionably dessert. It's not really a cuisine per se, but I just love dessert. I could eat dessert like breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day of the week. If I had to pick a cuisine, it would probably be Italian. There's a restaurant there's two Italian restaurants in Toronto that I absolutely love. One's called La Palma and one's called Tutti Matti. Highly recommended if anybody's looking for a good place to go when restaurants reopen. Hopefully that'll be soon.
Fingers
as far
crossed,
as movies,
right?
Sorry?
I said fingers crossed a bit.
Knock on wood, fingers crossed, absolutely. I'm going a little stir crazy myself with the weather being as cold as it is. It's hard to really do anything outdoors, and everything indoors is shut down. So,
yeah, and as far as your favorite movie goes,
my favorite movie. So I guess it used to be Network and Chinatown. I used to have more of a kind of art house type liking for cinema, and over the years I've gotten my patience for everything has kind of dwindled, and now the only thing I really have patience for nowadays are action movies. Generally speaking, my favorite type of action movies and films generally are always involving strong female characters. So I'd probably say my favorite action movie is Atomic Blonde. I don't know if you saw it. It's with Charlize Theron, who's amazing, yeah, anything with Jessica Chastain as well.
I got you.
Another amazing actress who plays some really good, strong female characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, Josh, is there a certain food that you haven't tried that you're dying to try or want to try?
So I had Ethiopian many years ago, and to be honest, the restaurant we went to was terrible, and it was just so bad. I think we all got food poisoning. So I've been very hesitant to retry it, but a lot of my friends speak very highly of the cuisine. So I'm really eager to try it again, to be honest. it was such a bad first experience that I just, when I think about it, it's not, nice thoughts. But I think that's the only cuisine. Like otherwise, I have a pretty open-minded palate. Like we go to all sorts of different types of restaurants when, at least when restaurants are open, that is.
I got you. It's always fun to explore, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And tell me, Josh, I'm curious to ask you about your propension to help people with disability law, too. As you know, Josh, I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy, which simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on helping people through disability law as well.
Well, I mean, I've had my own share of health issues, so I know what people go through. I know how scary it can be. And, like I was lucky in the sense that I had family, I was in school, so, I wasn't at the stage where I was supporting myself. But, most people really struggle, and, it's very scary. And I like feeling good about myself at the end of the day, and helping these people does that. And somebody needs to. I get a lot of clients who come to me saying, they think that they don't have a case. They don't even realize that an insurance company cut them off because the insurance company simply doesn't want to pay, and they think, oh, that's it, and they think they don't have a case. But sad that there's so many people who experience that. I also do a lot of pro bono. Actually, I do some pro bono at Law Help Ontario, but I also take on a lot of disability you know, not necessarily kind of money-making disability cases, like for example, CPP appeals, ODSP appeals, things like that. So, I just think it's important to help. Unfortunately, lawyers are very expensive. And, certain areas you can do by contingency, which, kind of deals with the issue of being able to pay for a lawyer. But, some areas like, if you need a lawyer to do a CPP appeal, if you don't have money to pay, it's challenging. Like there aren't a lot of lawyers who would do it. So
Well, it's always good to pay it forward for sure, absolutely. And Josh, I'm curious to ask you about your advice to first-time lawyers entering the field and how you would advise them to seek out success after they graduate law
yeah.
school.
Well, one thing is, I'm sure every lawyer hears this their first day of law school, but reputation is very, very important. And one thing I did not intentionally, but over the course of my practice, I always tried to be, very reasonable, easy to work with, no matter what the other side was saying. Even if I didn't like what they were saying, and um, because of that, that's essentially what helped me successfully open my own firm. Just being nice to people, being really nice to people and really easy to work with, and never taking anything personally when it comes to a case. Um, at the end of the day, your reputation means anything, and sometimes you don't always. People who have a bad reputation are often remembered, but people who have a good reputation are also remembered for being great to work with. And those types of lawyers are the ones who get recommended by other lawyers, and other professionals in the field. So that's one of my main things. The other thing is just about setting goals. I think for me, what's worked has been to set modest goals that are achievable in a small period of time. Like when I first got into law school, my first goal was just to graduate law school. It wasn't to like to become a partner at a Bay Street firm. When I finished law school, my first career goal was just to have a steady job for like 5 years, and to be able to like live in a nice but modest home, and like make a very modest but reasonable salary. Like small goals that you can achieve in a couple of years, so that you can keep building on them, rather than going from A to Z, or trying to go from A to Z right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to ask you, Josh, is there anything that you miss about your hometown of Montreal, buddy?
Poutine.
Yeah.
Aside from, to be honest, I think the thing I miss most is my family. All my family's still there, especially my parents, my brother, and my nephews, and my sister-in-law. And I don't get to spend as much time with my nephews, especially as they grow up. So yeah, those are the two things I miss most. I didn't really enjoy living in Montreal. It's a much smaller place compared to Toronto. Especially when you're talking about the English population, there's 2 degrees of separation between virtually everybody. And yeah, I was happy to go when I left. So
Well, there's still no place like home, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And Josh, tell me, when your calendar is free, buddy, tell me what are some of your guilty pleasures or something you like to do?
So I love jigsaw puzzles and Muay Thai. Actually, I got into Muay Thai recently. Well, not recently. I mean, I guess about 2 years ago. Um, I never thought, I've never really been into sports, but I just I decided to do one class and see if I'd like it, and I actually loved it. So that's that's become my hobby. Like I do that several times a week. I have a bag to practice with at home, and I love it. Yeah, so that's one of the main things. I still love to go see movies. I saw Spider-Man Far From Home, or No Way Home, sorry, that's the most recent one, just before theaters locked down, and that was a real treat. So
Yeah, absolutely. And Josh, my final question for you this morning has to do with your own personal or individual legacy and how you want that to be defined, buddy.
I guess I want to be thought of as a good person who really cared about people, and was a nice person. I guess it sounds silly, but it's really important to me to be a good person in life and just to do right by people and to treat everybody with respect. And I hope that's how people remember me, as as a person who was very kind and compassionate.
Yeah, absolutely. And Josh, finally, tell me, if people want to get connected with you, buddy, what's the best way they can do that?
The best way is by email at Joshua, Joshua at J Goldberg Law. J is in Josh, Goldberg, same spelling as Whoopi Goldberg, law, LAW.ca. So Joshua at jgoldberglaw.ca.
Fantastic. And Josh, I really want to thank you for your time this morning, talking about your passion for law and a little bit about your life story. Your time, energy, and efforts on my behalf are most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here
Thanks
today,
for
buddy.
having me too. It was a pleasure. Have a great weekend.